to my final project in which I run my own MNC, Reuse a Baggie. In this presentation, I'll cover a variety of the subjects I researched throughout the last month, including idea development, factors affecting product demand, the foreign exchange market, monitoring central bank intervention, determining whether IFE holds, denominating receivables in US dollars, monitoring exchange rate trends, establishing a foreign subsidiary, estimating cash flows, assessing exposure to country risks, and final details regarding my own MNC. For my project, I will be managing Reuse a Baggie, an MNC that produces reusable fabric baggies. The target country will be China, and products will be sold through a distributor. Since China contributes to the highest share of mismanaged plastic waste, the reusable baggie will be a staple in every household. Additionally, the company would purchase production supplies, hire labor, and incur production expenses in dollars. Examples of factors that can affect the balance of trade between the United States and China are national income, exchange rates, and inflation. When national income increases by a higher percentage than China, its current account should decrease. As the real income level rises, so does the consumption of goods, reflecting an increased demand for foreign goods. Regarding exchange rates, as the value of a country's currency changes, the prices of its exported goods will change for the importing countries, as well as the demand for those goods. Lastly, if the level of inflation in the economy is high, demand of exports by other nations will decrease, reducing the current account balance of the nation. If the level of inflation is low, goods become more competitive, improving the current account balance. One of the most important factors in determining trade balance of the nation is the exchange rate, as depreciation results in a relatively more competitive currency as compared to foreign currencies, increasing exports of the nation. In contrast, appreciation decreases the demand for exports. While China's main exports include machinery, fuels, ores, vehicles, and plastics, among others, reusable fabric baggies are not included. China has implemented various laws to regulate imports. To begin, companies seeking to engage in import trade need to register with the Ministry of Commerce. Imports are limited as some goods are categorized as prohibited, restricted, or permitted. While most goods fall into the permitted category, certain goods, such as waste and toxics, are banned from being imported, while some products in the restricted category require quotas or licenses. Tariffs, value-added tax, and consumption tax are assessed at the point of importation. Many tariffs have been lowered since China's accession into the World Trade Organization. In this sense, the average tariff dropped from 15.3% in 2000 to 9.3% in 2017. While Reuse a Baggie will need to register with the Ministry of Commerce and pay for the cost of tariffs, the company will not see an issue as a restricted or prohibited good. The spot market is a public financial market in which financial instruments or commodities are traded for immediate delivery. A money market hedge can be used as a technique for hedging foreign exchange risk using the money market, in which highly liquid and short-term instruments such as treasury bills, bankers' acceptances, and commercial paper are traded. TD Ameritrade will be the best foreign currency exchange bank for dollars, as the bank offers competitive exchange rates. The bid-ask spread on a recent quotation by TD is 6.5341 and 6.5353 respectively. Due to Reuse a Baggie's exposure to foreign markets, the company can also benefit from the utilization of currency swap forward contracts to hedge against risk exposure associated with exchange rate fluctuations. To do this, cash flows in the foreign currency will be swapped with domestic at a predetermined rate. During the past month, the Chinese yuan has increased by 1.38%. The currency saw a 4.75% increase within the last 3 months and an 8.58% increase within the last year. If the Fed strengthens the dollar, the cost of exporting goes up with the increase in the valuation of the dollar. If the Fed weakens the dollar, depreciation benefits exporters as the amount of imports is reduced due to the high comparative cost. Indirect central bank intervention can change the interest rates affecting market liquidity. Additionally, intervention will reduce the interest rate of lending to member banks, increasing the lending capacity of their member banks, as well as the supply of cash in the market. Since the reform of the exchange rate system in China, the People's Bank of China has adopted various means to intervene actively in order to stabilize the exchange rate. The International Fisher effect is based on the analysis of interest rates associated with present and future risk-free investments and is used to help predict currency movements. The IFE states that differences in nominal interest rates between countries can be used to predict changes in exchange rates. Countries with higher nominal interest rates experience higher rates of inflation, which will result in currency depreciation against other currencies. Demonstrated by the table, the IFE predicts a depreciation for the Chinese yuan against the US dollar, which is also exhibited in the actual yield, which has different values than expected, as shown in the table. Transaction exposure results from the difference in the final settlement value of foreign currency denominated assets and liabilities due to changes in exchange rates between the date those assets or liabilities arose and their settlement date. If receivables would be denominated in dollars instead of the foreign currency, reusability assets would have the potential to be worth less when the actual payment was received, resulting in a loss. Economic exposure refers to an effect caused on a company's cash flows due to unexpected currency rate fluctuations. If domestic currency weakens, foreign competition will increase sales in the domestic market, thus impacting cash flows. The graph demonstrates how the value of the foreign currency of concern has changed in the last 5 weeks. The Chinese yuan and the United States dollar exchange rates have seen a downward trend. During this time, the percentage change averaged at 6.55%. If the currency's value would continue following this recent trend, I would anticipate that it would depreciate given the current downward sloping trend. While there are various advantages of choosing to establish a foreign subsidiary, the main aspect is the control and support of the parent company. The already established parent company will have the resources and employees to staff the subsidiary, so the subsidiary receives a ready-made network of people with experience in the business. However, a significant disadvantage of establishing a foreign subsidiary is the cost. In this sense, the choice to acquire a local company may be a quick solution, but it will also be a more expensive option. It may be difficult for the parent company not to overpay for the local company's assets, and the price will be bumped up further if there is a bidding war. To estimate the dollar revenue to be received from reusable baggie, I would multiply the price of one reusable baggie by the expected sales. The table to the far left details the expected revenues of reusable baggie within its first year of operations, assuming 3,600 units are sold within the first year. Regarding expenses, I have accounted for various costs incurred within the first year of operation, including advertising, the website, business entity, licensing, technology, equipment, starting inventory, and tools and supply costs. Altogether, these costs amount to $2,450. In estimating net cash flows, the total estimated cost of expenses are deducted from total estimated revenue, amounting to a gross profit of $13,850. However, this estimate of net cash flows could be overestimated for a few reasons. The first could be a result of underestimating total expenses incurred. The second could be due to an overestimation of expected revenues. Political factors that have the potential to expose reusable baggie to risk include the tendency of residents to purchase locally produced products, laws creating barriers for foreign-based MNCs, blockage of fund transfers in an effort to force subsidiaries to undertake suboptimal projects, currency inconvertibility, conflicts with neighboring countries, inefficient government bureaucracies, and corruption. Financial risk factors can have a strong impact on international projects. The most obvious financial risk characteristic is the current and potential state of the country's economy. Interest rates, exchange rates, and inflation strongly influence economic growth. High interest rates slow economic growth and reduce demand. Exchange rates influence the demand for exports, affecting the country's production and income level, while inflation affects consumer purchasing power and the demand for products. Since capital structure is the amount of debt or equity, or both, employed by a firm to fund its operations and finance its assets, capital structure is typically expressed as a debt-to-equity ratio. To calculate the debt-to-equity ratio, the company's total liabilities are divided by its total shareholders' equity. Assuming Ryuzabagi has $45,000 in assets and $15,000 in liabilities, equity is determined by subtracting liabilities from overall assets, resulting in $30,000 in equity. Total liabilities is then divided by the total shareholders' equity, producing a debt-to-equity ratio of 0.33. This means that for every 33 cents of debt, Ryuzabagi has $1 of equity and is therefore low leveraged. Equity might be limited as business begins due to startup and investment costs. Regarding long-term debt denomination, the graph compares the U.S. interest rate to the foreign interest rate over the last 8 quarters. Typically, the China loan prime rate is higher than the U.S. Fed funds rate. Ryuzabagi may consider long-term financing in a foreign currency as a strategy to reduce financing costs. It can forecast the exchange rates for the periods in which it will make loan payments and estimate the annualized cost of financing in that currency. However, the actual cost of debt financing remains uncertain because the subsidiary's forecasts of future exchange rate movements may not be accurate. Regarding long-term interest rates, in 2020 to 2021, China's borrowings by governments and state-owned enterprises are projected to rise to 185 to 190% of their gross domestic product. This is significantly higher than the country's borrowing rate of 167% in 2019. This rate is higher than the current U.S. federal debt of 98.2% of gross domestic product. Given the current economic climate in China, I think I would have to pay a lending rate of 6.62 to 12% if I borrowed funds in China. Thank you for watching my presentation.